Now we're going to begin. I'd like to tell you a story about people that are incredibly amazing. They are called the Bnei Menashe, and they have kind of come into our lives in a very interesting way, and they have a very interesting story. So first of all, there was a man named Michael Freund who was the founder and chairman of Shavei Israel, and years ago, about 20 years ago, he was working for the office of the Prime Minister. Yeah, definitely close the door. He was working for the office of the Prime Minister, and he was in charge of getting a phone call. Whatever. He was it was Ren. He was in charge of communications, of mail and stuff, and he received a crumpled up letter, a yellow crumpled up envelope, and he opened it, and it was from these people that said, you know, we are the Bnei Menashe, and we live in India, in Northeast India, and we would like to please come back to Zion, come back to Israel. Please help us return. They wrote this letter to the Prime Minister. Michael opens this letter, and he was like, what are they talking about? You know, the Bnei Menashe, like they're in India? Who are these people? Why did we never hear of them? And he thought it was nonsense. But, you know, they wrote the letter. They took the time to write the letter. He took the time to respond. So he wrote back to them. And can you close it? It's very noisy out there. So he wrote to them. And he said, well, who are you? Why do you think you are Bnei Menashe? Or, in other words, the descendants of Menashe, one of the 10 lost tribes. Why do you think that you are the Bnei Menashe? And where have you been all this time? Why have we never heard of you? You know, like, why did they all of a sudden wake up in the 1990s and say, we've been here all this time, bring us home? Why did they ask, you know, years and years before? So they wrote back, and it started a communication that he really didn't expect to get into, but it, you know, really ended up changing his life and changing their lives and kind of changing history, at least for us, for Jewish people, and for the Bnei Menashe. So what happened? Who are they, and where did they come from? So let's go back, first of all, to where did they come from in the beginning? So the Bnei Menashe, they are one of the 10 lost tribes. Menashe is one of the 10 lost tribes. We talk about the 12 tribes being the sons of Jacob, sons of Yaakov, and back in the days of the early days when we had the first temple, which is almost 3,000 years ago, and we were here in Israel with all of the tribes united in one kingdom, and then the kingdom split, and you ended up having a kingdom of Judah and Benjamin, Yehuda and Binyamin and Levi, and you had the other 10 tribes, and they were called the Israel versus Judah, the kingdoms of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. And in the time about 2,700 years ago, the whole 10 tribes, they were all sent into exile by Sancherib, who was the king of the Assyrian Empire. It was one of the empires that came in to fight with Israel back then. And the entire 10 tribes were exiled, lost to history. We don't know what happened to them. We didn't know what happened to them for 2,700 years. Okay, so again, this is during the first temple. Gone. We never heard anything from them. And now all of a sudden, here are these people that say we're the descendants of Menashe. So where have they been all this time? So as the history goes, all of the research that they did of what must have transpired when they migrated out of Israel, this particular group, they migrated all the way east into China, where they were for a very, very long time, and eventually made their way to India, to northeast, like near Burma, near China, and to an area where it was really very remote. And they thought they were the last of their people. Like, why did they not connect with the rest of the Jews? Because they didn't know there were other Jews. They didn't even know that they were Jews, because the word Jew comes from Judah. So if they would hear anything about Jewish people or Judaism, or would it mean anything to them? Because it wasn't a word that they associated with themselves, because they were Menashe. That's who they were. So, here they were in this very remote area. For a long time, they didn't even have a script. They weren't reading and writing. Everything that they learned, everything they knew, everything they did was oral traditions passed parent to child, passed by the elders. And so they weren't reading newspapers. They weren't, we're talking about, centuries ago. Everything was just, oral. And so they kept a lot of the traditions, Jewish traditions, which they weren't calling Jewish traditions, but Menashe traditions. They kept Shabbat, and they kept, in a very simple, primitive way, and they kept Pesach, they kept the laws of family purity, mikvah, certain things that they kept in a very simple way, and they stayed separate from the rest of the people. And then, about 150 years ago, you had the British Empire come into India, like they were everywhere, and as part of their going around and civilizing all these tribes and all these people all over the world, they had their missionaries to come and bring people to Christianity, which they did very successfully in a lot of places, including this area where the Bnei Menashe were. So what did they do? They started teaching them to read and write. They gave them the English letters for their script, even though they still had their own language. And they started teaching them the Bible. And they're teaching them all these stories about like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and the splitting of the Red Sea and the Exodus from Egypt and all these things, which is, of course, part of their Bible too. And the Bnei Menashe are like listening to these stories, and they're like, well, wait a minute. Those are our stories. Who are you people, coming from Europe, bringing our stories to us? It didn't make sense to them. But on the other hand, they also had this other stuff, because they had things about Jesus and this other thing, that's other religion that didn't really relate to them. But many of them, most of them, actually did convert, and to this day, that there's many of them in that region are Christians, and they're not part of the story because they're Christians, and that's fine, and that's their right. But there was a small segment of them that just never connected, and they said, this. Can we close it? There was a small segment of them that they were like, this isn't right. This isn't who we are, and they never really took to Christianity, but they didn't know what else to do. And then, in 1948, when the State of Israel was founded, finally news that was big enough to reach their ears, something that they were able to understand and recognize, oh, this is what we've been waiting for, this is what we've been praying for, this is the prophecies coming true, it's happening. And they were very, very excited, and they realized that they were, in fact, not the only of their people left in the world. And some of them actually started to walk to Israel, because they were like, okay, well, the Messiah is here, and we got our land back, and we have to return. And some of them started literally walking to Israel, which, of course, didn't work out very well, and they had to turn back. But in the meantime, they recognized that the prophecies were coming true, and that they somehow needed to make their way back home to Israel. So what did they do? They started writing to prime ministers, writing to the government, saying, hey, don't forget us. We're the Bnei Menashe. We're here. We're in Northeast India. We're waiting to come home. Bring us home. And nobody answered. And years went by, and we don't know for sure that they were writing from Ben Gurion, but we think they were. But they have records from as far back as Golda Meir, and they never heard back. Nobody ever responded to them until Netanyahu's first time in office in the 90s, when Michael responded. Now, they had been in touch with people, individuals, like people had made their way over there, like they weren't completely disconnected at that point, but they were never approached by the government, where they were actually recognized. And okay, so now we have the government now finally is saying, oh, who are you people? Let's take a look. Let's see if there's something to your story. Like, are you really who you say you are? How do we know? So they actually sent delegations. They sent rabbinical delegations to India to meet with them, to examine their traditions, to listen to them, to talk to them, to hear their story, and decide, because it's a big deal. We're talking about 10,000 people. Is the State of Israel going to say, yes, you are all Jewish and we welcome you back and we're bringing you home? Or are they going to say, oh, we're not so sure? So this is something that they had to really evaluate. And by the way, we get people all the time who write to us at Shavei Israel, and say, we're lost tribes, we're whatever, bring the 3.5 million of us from our country to Israel, and of course, and we don't, So in any case, so they said, hi, come on in. So they sent the delegation to India, and they examined. Just close the door. And so they examined, and they decided that yes, they are indeed descendants of the Jewish people. How did they decide? Well, they listened to their stories, and they looked at their traditions, and there were a lot of different things. And they were able to say, the chief rabbi, actually Shlomo Amar, in 2005, he was the one that came up to the conclusion that they are indeed descendants of the Jewish people. What does that mean? They're descendants of the Jewish people. Are they Jewish or are they not Jewish? So what he determined was that, yes, they are B'nai Menashe, and they are, the people who were exiled from the Jewish people way back 2,700 years ago. But we have no idea what happened in 2,700 years. Maybe there was intermarriage. Maybe there were conversions. Maybe. In all of that time, there's no documentation to go from here to here to establish that each person is halachically, actually legally Jewish. And that's a complication. Why is it a complication? Because in order for Israel to bring them home and say, okay, yes, you have right of return, we're going to bring you home, they have to be able to have the right of return, which means they have to be Jewish, halachically, or the child of a Jew, a single Jew, or the grandchild of a single Jew. But they have none of those documentation, even though they may have all of their family and all the tradition says that they are descendants of the Jewish people, but they don't have that legal documentation that says, I am Jewish, or my parent or my grandparent is Jewish. So somebody could really technically be Christian, but their grandparent is Jewish, and they can make Aliyah. While these people who are living their lives as Torah Jews, they are following the Torah and doing everything that they possibly can to lead a Jewish life, do not have that right of return. And that's just that's the law. Maybe the law will change. Today the law is not changed. That law is a holdover from Hitler's times, from post-Holocaust, when Hitler decided that was a Jew. A Jew was somebody who had those criteria. So that's what Israel used as its criteria, ironically enough. So that's fine, but for the B'nai Menashe, okay, so what do? So there's a really easy solution. All they have to do is convert. If they do an official conversion, then they have right of return, right? Easy answer. But the problem is that in India, they have laws against proselytizing, missionaries, that are holdovers from the British Empire days. So because of that, no rabbinic court can go. There's no rabbinic court in India to do a conversion. So a rabbinic court has to be sent. And you can't send them because it's against the law. So all of a sudden, you have these B'nai Menashe. They're ready to come. All they want to do is make Aliyah. All they need to do is to convert, and they can't convert. And they can't come because they didn't convert. They can't convert because they didn't come. So they're stuck. So what happened? Michael Freund created an organization called Shavei Israel. And this organization was created to help bridge that gap and be able to create opportunities for the B'nai Menashe to be able to make Aliyah. How? By bringing them on a special visa where they come not as olim, not as immigrants, not as Jews with right of return, but as in the special circumstances of a one-way ticket. It's very hard to get a one-way ticket for a group of people from another country because the country wants to know that these people have a destination, that they're not going to be stuck in another country. So therefore, we had to get this special visa to bring, a few hundred at a time on these one-way tickets. We bring them to our absorption center. We help them facilitate the conversion, which the Rabbanut does. We don't do it. And then once they're here and they converted, then they make Aliyah from here, become Israeli citizens from here, and official Jews, and join the Jewish people, which is what they've been waiting to do. So I had the opportunity to go to India and escort a group of B'nai Menashe on their Aliyah, and I'll take you on a little tour, hopefully, for the first time using this device, and show you what it's like. So this is when I first arrived. I first of all had no idea what to expect. I did not expect really much of anything, but I really didn't expect to see so many people looking so Jewish there. It's nowhere. It's literally nowhere. It took me 5 flights to get from there to here, so it's like far and very remote, and 5 flights and then a long dusty ride. It's far. And yet here is this thriving Jewish community with all these people looking very Jewish. And there were so many of them, and you can see all of them with the kippahs, and it's really amazing and very exciting and kind of inspiring, to go there and see all of these Jewish people in such a remote place and, just managing it on their own. They're adorable. I totally fell in love with them, especially the kids, and I would take pictures of them whenever I could. Another thing that I found very, very exciting and inspiring is how Zionistic they are. Everywhere you go, there's Israeli flags, and they teach the kids Israeli songs, and it's very, very much a part of their lives. Now, there are 10,000 of them. 3,000 have come so far that we've brought to Israel and Aliyah, and so another 7,000 remain. And they can't just decide, okay, we're ready for the all 7,000 of us. They are ready. Every one of them would come tomorrow if they could. But because of their special circumstances, we have to always get permissions. We have to go to the government and say, can we bring? And then they do their deliberations and they say, okay, you could bring 200. Okay, you could bring 500 over the next year. Whatever it is that they say. And then we have to raise the money because it's not automatic. The government doesn't pay for it. They give us a little bit of money, but not much. And it's a big deal. So there's Michael. Of course, the B'nai Menashe love him because he pretty much gave up everything for them, and he created this organization and put his heart and soul into it, heart and soul and money into it, and doesn't take a salary. This is supposed to be a video, but I don't think the video actually is. Just a picture of a video. But it's a song, Israeli song. So they sing all these songs. You see, they're wearing tzitzit, like they're really living their lives as Jews there, which is amazing because there's so little support for them. But at the same time, you can see that they also very much have their own culture, and their culture is kind of like blend. You'll see in a number of pictures how they've blended their culture into their Jewishness and their ultimately their Israeliness. And they retain it, even though they do become really Israeli, but they do retain that little spark of their own culture. What the heck is that? It's not us, is it? Okay. Our building? Oh, not. No, it stopped. Good. Okay. Okay, this picture. I love this picture. So I mentioned that the rabbis went to India and they were able to evaluate their traditions and stuff and determine that they really were indeed of the Jewish people. But how did they do that? Like, what did they use as proof? So this was really the proof. I mean, this was just the reenactment of the proof. But they left the Jewish people during the time of the first temple. During the temple times, we were still doing animal sacrifices as part of their daily practice, as part of the daily ritual of prayer and worship was animal sacrifices. They left back then, 2,700 years ago. They never got the memo that we stopped doing that 2,000 years ago. So they've been doing it all along. Now, the fact that you have some tribe in some place in India doing animal sacrifices isn't proof. But it wasn't the fact that they were doing it, but how. Because the sacrifices, according to the Torah, the Jewish Torah, is very, very specific and very unique. And there are certain things with the knife and with the blood and what they do with the blood and what they do with all these different minutiae that are practiced. And they were doing all that, which was really quite amazing after all these years. But that practice, because there was an unbroken chain of this practice that they always did it. So because they were doing it until recent times, so they still have the knowledge and the know-how. And so sometimes when they have visitors, like me, I was a visitor, they do a little demonstration. It's quite disgusting. I did not include the disgusting pictures, but trust me, it was disgusting, but very cool at the same time. It's like, wow, they actually still do that. Here you can see that, they're literally living, a Jewish Orthodox life. All the way there. The supplies they have are minimal. We bring, whenever we go, we bring them whatever we can. They get a lot more supplies when they arrive here, but they do whatever they can. This was a Brit Milah that happened to be exactly when I was there, which was really amazing. Really, it's just so cool to see that. Actually, I'll tell you, when I was there were a couple of other people who came. There was a reporter from one of the Channel 10, I think, I forgot, for one of the channels, and he, not religious, and he was there. We were there over Shabbat, and he came over to me after Friday night services, and he said, I've been living in Israel all my life, and I can't believe that I had to travel so many thousands of kilometers away from Israel to be so inspired by a Shabbat. That's what it was like, the way that they would sing, there's with such intention and such love. It was just really, really beautiful. Sarah Moore, the kids. She was actually with me on the flight when I came. This guy was with me on the flight when I came. Now, a lot of them are manual workers, manual laborers, in farms and fields, and others of them are very educated, all different. A lot of people will ask, well, how are they supposed to make a living when they come if they're, so it's challenging. For some of them, it's very challenging, and for others of them, they'll come and they get job training, and it really all depends. So this fellow, he was coming with his children and grandchildren. He was coming as like the third generation and was not going to be working once he came. So that wasn't an issue for him. But for others of them, they would come and they would, and they do find work, and they find that people have, we have several that have done dental hygienist and dental assistant programs. We have some that have done social work programs, which is amazing because now we have social workers who know their culture and speak their language, who are their culture, and it's really amazing because they're able to understand so much better than just a person who has to learn the culture. This family, for example, the sister was a registered nurse, and one of the brothers had actually just finished his bachelor's degree in social anthropology and was accepted for his master's degree, and then his turn came to make Aliyah, and he gave up the master's because he had this opportunity and he didn't want to miss out. So it's really, it's something that they so strongly believe in this. A lot of people will say, or people, I shouldn't say a lot, people occasionally will say, like, oh, they probably just want to make Aliyah because they want to come to like a better country or a better whatever. And it's not true. Like, this is what they know. They have their language, their culture, their professions, whatever it is that they're doing, and they leave everything behind. Even somebody like this who had this opportunity for really advanced education, and he left it all behind because Aliyah, that's what they want to do. I mean, that's it. That to them is everything. Now, when they say goodbye, the leaving, the actual leaving, is very emotional because they're not traveling back and forth. They're not seeing their family. A lot of them, when they say goodbye, they don't know when or if they're going to see their family and loved ones again, and it's very, very emotional. And people are just crying. It's something that, like, a lot of people from Western culture who make Aliyah, coming from the United States or England or France or other places, they say goodbye and then they go back 2 months later for a bar mitzvah, or they travel back and forth, or they have business. There's a lot of traveling back and forth. But for them in India, and specifically, this group, they're not traveling back and forth. It's very, very expensive, and most of them just can't manage it. So it's very, very difficult when they leave. And then when you see people leaving under those conditions where they're literally leaving everything they ever knew, they've never been to Israel, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and they're saying goodbye to loved ones that they don't know when they're going to see again, you know that that's coming from their heart. This is not, oh, let's go on a, for fun, or let's go for, like, find our fortune. It's a big deal for them. Just some of the kids saying goodbye. And then, of course, the traveling was quite an adventure, traveling with all these people from, tiny babies to elderly people, and some of them had never flown internationally or even never flown, so it was, quite an adventure, but very, very exciting. They were all so happy and so, like, just, excited to be doing this. This is when we landed. It's amazing. They also sing all the time. I can show you the songs afterwards because it's not in this particular program, but they sing whenever we go anywhere, and it's kind of, neat, like we like land in Israel and they like burst into song. But we were on Air Tashkent. It wasn't like El Al. Like, it was, just all these like Russians, whatever, and all of a sudden the B'nai Menashe are singing, Shavu Banim, or like these songs about returning. And they also have a lot of their own songs that they've written in their language, in Kuki. They have other languages too, but this group is from Manipur and they speak Kuki. And some of the songs are actually pretty old. And the Israel National Music Archives actually brought them in and recorded their songs so that they wouldn't get lost. Because they have all these like amazing songs and they will be lost. When you bring a whole bunch of people to another country, the language is going to be lost, all the culture. It's, I don't know the Yiddish songs that my grandparents sang. I don't know any of them. So we know that they would be lost. So so they took it very seriously and said, this is a part of our culture. We need to preserve it. So of course, coming through the airport, it's very, very exciting. There with the flags, everybody, and people seeing them. Everyone's like, who are they? Where are they from? They're so unaccustomed to seeing, so many people, who look so different from, let's say from like Western Jews or the Middle Eastern Jews or whatever. They're not accustomed to seeing so many people from this region who are all so clearly Jewish. Now, when they arrive, it's like the opposite of the leaving. Leaving, you have all the tearful goodbyes. But when the arrivals, you have all these tearful hellos. And, you have people who are reuniting. I mean, I've seen, people who haven't seen their family 10, 15, 20 years. There was sisters who were reunited after 22 years. I mean, 22 years, that's mind-boggling. And then you have, like, here you have this grandfather who's meeting his grandson for the very first time. He's giving him the blessing of the children. And like everybody's crying, you see this and it's like, oh my God, I cry when I just look at the picture and I remember this moment, and it's just, so this is every single time. And in fact, usually for some reason, it's always like the middle of the night till they arrive. And, so like 2 o'clock in the morning, and you have these like children, you were there at that middle of the night one, right? And you have like, children that are waiting up, whatever, but they've been waiting for however many, 5, 10, 20 years. They're going to wait till 2 o'clock in the morning and be there when their family emerges from the plane. It's just so incredibly exciting. And this was a group of Mechina kids, like Israeli students who came to the airport also late at night to greet the flight. So now what happens? They get here, they arrive in Israel, where do they go? So we bring them we have our own absorption center. It's near Haifa, and they're there for about 3 months. It takes them about 3 months to be able to, till they do all the things that they need to do, including to convert. We don't convert them. We bring the rabbinate. They have their own team of people who do it. But they come and they every week they convert like another couple of families. And it's not such a big deal. They have to test them, but it's not such a big deal because they've been living this life for, most of them have been living it their whole lives. So it's really just a matter of formalities and going through what needs to be done. How cute is this kid? They're just beautiful. I mean, the kid, I love them. If you look through my computer, you'll see just like literally thousands of pictures of B'nai Menashe. This is the conversion. They convert as a family. On our side of the table is the family unit, and then on the other side, the three on the right are the rabbis, the conversion court rabbis, and the other guy is Tzvi. He works actually for us, and he does the translation for them. And they test, each one of them gets asked questions according to their age. Like little kids get asked questions as well, but things that are appropriate. I remember once I was listening, and they were asking, I thought, really hard questions. And I asked the rabbi afterwards, I'm like, why are you asking them such hard questions? And he said, usually when we do these conversions, they've been studying for a year, maybe 2 years, and they know whatever they know. But them, they really know the stuff. And, it's not that we're challenging them to try to trick them, but we respect their knowledge, and we know that they're going to know this stuff, so we give them the opportunity to shine and to show off. So I thought that was pretty neat. This is a family, and the families, they are with generations. Like the grandparents, when they can, they come with the family. So you have the grandfather, the parents, and then the 3 children who are together. So they did their conversion together. A newly minted Jewish family. Now after they do the conversion, then you have a whole bunch of married couples who are Jewish but have never married according to Jewish tradition as Jews because they weren't officially Jews. So every time we do a group of conversions, we have a group wedding. Each one gets married individually, but we do it, as one big event. We actually have a rack of wedding gowns that they can choose from, and it's fun, and we make a big deal about it. I need to change the picture. I have so many better pictures now. But we have, it's really a lot of fun. We do a chuppah, and we do, everything, breaking the glass, all the different traditions of a Jewish wedding. There's dancing, food. It's, a whole big event. And even you can see in the back there, that elderly couple. Like, we've had couples who have been married 50, 60 years, but they convert, they get married, even like the elderly ones. And they have a lot of fun, they get their makeup done. It's very cute. It's very exciting. Now this picture, that's actually my daughter there, second from left. And she came with me to the weddings one time up in Haifa, near Haifa. And she, as an Israeli, growing up here with the whole ingathering of the exiles, there's so many different types of people. She had never really seen a large group of people who all have like, similar skin tone. And like she'd never seen that like one type of ethnicity and one like that. She's just used to everybody being like, a whole mix of people. And she asked me about it. She said, why do they all look similar? Why do they all have similar skin color? A few minutes after she asked me this question, I was sitting with some of the B'nai Menashe girls, same age. We were taking a selfie with my phone. They're looking at the picture of, my face and with all their cute little faces around me, and they pointed to my face. And they said, Laura, why is your face so white? So everybody has their own perspective. I thought that was very cute. And this couple was also married at the absorption center, but they had actually been engaged and not married yet before the Aliyah, so they decided to wait. and they waited till after. So we said, okay, they get their own wedding. They don't have to do the group wedding. This is their first wedding. They're getting the full treatment. And I was at another wedding recently. It was another B'nai Menashe couple that one had made Aliyah and the other hadn't yet made Aliyah, and they waited 5 years until they were both here in Israel, both passed their Aliyah, both did their conversion, and then they got married. And oh wow, what a wedding. It was just incredibly beautiful. So now after they've done everything, they did the conversion, they're finished with their whole process in the absorption center, they do official Aliyah, they immigrate to Israel. They're in Israel, but they do the paperwork so that they become citizens. And then we take them on the trip of their lives. We take them to Jerusalem. Because remember, they're far, all the way up near Haifa. So this, for most of them, will have been their very first time in Jerusalem. And wow, what an experience. And we take, it's usually around 200, 250 of them. And we bring them all down. If you've ever been to Jerusalem in the old city quarter, the Jewish quarter, and you come down the stairs. So we're bringing all these B'nai Menashe down the stairs, and they're looking at the kotel, seeing it from far, and crying, singing. They're for sure singing, because that's what they do. They always sing, and they have great songs, and always singing. And and it's very exciting, and everybody who's around, everybody gets very, very excited, and taking pictures and like wow. So yeah, it's a very, very thrilling thing being a part of that. And then where do they go? So they go to a lot of different places. We have a number of different communities that we bring them to. Nowadays, we usually bring them to the north, because the north, there are so many communities. First of all, it's less expensive, and the communities are looking to get more people. So we have this partnership where they want more people, and it's economically beneficial for them. They are very willing to work with us. They give them the different services. They need a lot of services. I needed a lot of services when I came. When you come on Aliyah, when you move to a new country, you don't have the language, you don't necessarily have jobs, your kids need extra help with homework, all these things. So when you have a group of people who are all coming together, you know that they're going to need services. So we work with the municipalities to make sure that they get what they need, after school care and after school programs, homework help, all different types of things. We get them, we try to find scholarships for the parents to be able to find, if they need to do job retraining, to help pay for the job retraining and to help pay for childcare while they're doing the job. It's a whole process. Like, we want them to succeed, and in order for them to succeed, we have to make sure to give them the tools to be able to make a living for themselves, and with pride, and support their families. So when we take it upon ourselves to bring them here, we take the whole project. It's not just, okay, you're here, you made Aliyah, have a nice life, but rather we're going to escort you and get and set you on your way so that you're able to make a life for yourself. So they're all over the north. This group is in Tzfat. This is in Ma'alot, which is way up north. This is like a young adult learning program. This is one of the job training programs, also in the north, in Upper Nazareth, where they learn like die cutting parts for machinery. And it was very cold in that room. Sure why. This is one of the children's centers, like an after-school center club. Now, they don't have their own synagogues because we want them to integrate with the communities. So, like, we encourage them to be very much part of the community, but at the same time getting the help that they need. So it works very, very well, because the communities they go to want, they embrace them, and they have, like, there's families that adopt. Each family is adopted by one of the local Israeli families, and it works pretty well. I took a tour of some of the communities just to see them, to see how they do and what they do. And so this is just in one of the kindergartens. This is in Upper Nazareth. Both of those are Upper Nazareth. This is in Ma'alot, also Ma'alot Elementary School, a young couple in Ma'alot. This is in Tzfat. Also in Tzfat, there's Michael. This was a wedding of a couple that actually had made Aliyah years before. They were here around 7 years, and it was one of the most beautiful weddings that I'd been to. And what was so amazing was, like, you go to this wedding, it's 7 years later, they've been in Israel all this time, they're Israeli, they're speaking Hebrew, and at the same time you really feel their B'nai Menashe culture, you feel the Jewish culture, you feel really just kind of like how they meld it together. It's really, really quite amazing. I'm not sure how it'll go with the next few generations, but right now, It's very much a part of who they are. They do really well. They join the army. The army's really, really important to them. In fact, because they don't always have control. They never have control about when they can make aliyah. About when they can make aliyah. So sometimes the young men or young women, they plan to join the army, but by the time they get here, it's too late. They've aged out of the draft. And a lot of them where that happens will push themselves in. They say, no, I waited this long. I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to serve Israel. I want to be in the army. And they will do whatever they can to get in. It's really important to them. And I just find that so heartwarming, to see that love and dedication. And that's basically it. So that's the B'nai Menashe. In a nutshell. Obviously, there's much, much more that can be said. But that's really who they are. Is this program supposed to be B'nai Menashe or general? B'nai Menashe, right? I don't remember.
You call this Lost Hidden Youth Communities.
Oh, okay, fine. So just okay. I didn't remember. I did so much speaking in the past few weeks.
You told me this.
I forgot. So, anyways, so here we are with B'nai Menashe. We do all these things. So what Michael Freund, when he founded this organization, we're doing all this for B'nai Menashe, but he realized that there are really many other types of lost and hidden Jewish people that are underserviced or not serviced at all, that are out there, similar to the B'nai Menashe, where they belong as part of the Jewish people. They belong here, and yet because of just things that happened in time that were no fault of their own, had been disconnected and lost their own heritage. And he recognized that there are many other types of people who are in a similar circumstance. So one of those types of people are the Bnei Anusim, or the descendants of those who were forcibly converted in the Inquisition. So we're talking about 500 years ago now. And when you have people like that, it's a very similar circumstance, but at the same time, a completely different story. You have people who were forced to convert and forced to live this other life that was not their own choosing, and many of them said, okay, we'll do what we have to do to save our lives, but we know in our hearts that we're Jews. And they kept these certain traditions alive by, for example, lighting Shabbat candles on Friday afternoon in a closet or in the basement or something like that, and not saying anything about it because they were afraid it would leak. If they would tell their children, we're doing it for this reason, what if their children tells the neighbor? So they would just do it. And these traditions carried on for all of these years. And only now, all of a sudden, there's all this coming out now in this time, with this ingathering the exiles, that people are waking up and saying, why are we lighting candles in the basement every week on Friday for all of these years? There must be a reason. And they're researching it and discovering that they have Jewish roots. Are they actually Jewish? Some are, some aren't. It's so many years, it's hard to tell sometimes. But they know they have Jewish roots. And many of them are looking to just even to understand, why do I do this? What's the significance of my Jewish roots? And what can I do to reclaim my heritage? So we have opened up many programs, and we have centers, we have emissaries in different countries, programs in different countries, and we have Chaya, who does many different things with communities literally all over the world, in Spain and Portugal and Italy, South America, and we work with these people and provide them with what they need and what they can use to return or to understand. We don't have an agenda. We're not saying, oh, you must be Jewish, or whatever it is that's going to be good for them, but that they should at least feel like they have a choice, and that it's something that was taken from them. We're giving them the option of taking it back in whatever way they wish. So this couple, as an example, this was a couple that was married for, I think, 25 years in Spain, and they discovered their Jewish roots. They came to Israel and did conversion to make it official that they are Jewish, and then they did a wedding just like the B'nai Menashe had done those weddings. And in fact, this woman from Portugal was the same thing. Also, it was two couples from Portugal, from Belmonte, same thing. They came to Israel, did formal conversion, and got married again after they'd been married for many years. And we actually produced this book, which is in Spanish. Do you have Jewish roots? It's an ebook. It's free. People can download it. And when we created it, when we published it, we got so many downloads right away, because people were searching. Like we weren't telling them download it. They were already doing the search, and we just made it available. We got so many downloads in the first place that it crashed our system. We had, you know this? You heard that story?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, it crashed the system. We were in shock, and we thought that it wasn't successful. We put it up. It was the weekend. And we came back. And we were like, oh, not so much. All right. And then we realized that the system was down. And then we realized that there were so many, and that it got backed up and it crashed. And we had to expand it so that it could handle the numbers. It was absolutely amazing. And since then, we've published it in Italian and in Portuguese, and soon, God willing, in English one of these days. But there's a need. People want to know. People are discovering that they have these Jewish roots. And I'll just tell you a couple more things. This is the one picture in my presentation that I did not take because I'm not that old. But these are Kaifeng Jews. I just love the picture. Kaifeng Jews is much older than the ones from the Spanish Inquisition, but not as old as the Bnei Menashe. So this is about 1,000 years, and this was there were Persian Jewish merchants who found that there was good work in a lot of good trade in China. So they went there for trade, and they decided to settle there. And so this is 1,000 years ago. At its height, there were like 5,000 in the community. So it was a pretty significant community. And they were very comfortable there, and they did not experience anti-Semitism, which has its pros and cons. Of course, it's great because it made life comfortable, but because they didn't experience anti-Semitism, they were much more relaxed with the people, and there was much more assimilation. But they maintained the knowledge of who they were. They maintained their community, but they lost the strength of the community. They lost the strength of the traditions. And about 200 years ago, the synagogue burnt down, the last synagogue, and then 150 years ago, or I might have the number switched, the rabbi passed away. One or the other. A while ago, they lost everything. They lost all of the things like holding them to the religion. They only had the knowledge, and they had actually in their ID cards it would still say that they know who the families are. They have the family trees. But sometimes they followed patrilineal descent. It could be just the father, not the mother. They didn't necessarily follow the traditions that are followed now by modern Jewry. So even though they know who they are, but in order to be accepted by the Jewish world, as it is today, they need to undergo conversion, similar to the Bnei Menashe. So we work with them now. It's very difficult for them now. In communist China, they do not have an easy time. We had a center there that was shut down. They had mezuzahs up on their doors that were pulled down by the police. It's really very difficult for them there. So we work with the community kind of quietly. We have an emissary. We have somebody who works with them who speaks Chinese. 2 years ago, we brought 5 young women here. Where are they? These 5 young women. And they just recently completed their conversion. It was 2 years. It took a long time for them to do the conversion because they don't have what the Bnei Menashe have. The Bnei Menashe live a Jewish Orthodox life in India, but they can't really because the government doesn't really allow for that kind of expression of religion. So they came and they worked very, very hard, and they finally completed their conversion and completed their aliyah, and we're very excited for them, and we're actually hoping to bring another few Chinese young women very soon. So that's very exciting. And the last group I'm going to tell you about is very, very recent, 70 years recent, and that is the hidden Jews of Poland after the Holocaust. Not the ones that were hidden during the Holocaust, but the ones who returned. Now, there weren't many who returned because 90% of the Jews of Poland were murdered in the Holocaust. And of those who survived, a lot went to the U.S., a lot came here, but there were quite a few who did return to Poland. And for those who did, they felt that nobody's going to know that we're Jewish, or, because who knows, look what happened. And then, to make matters worse, not that they could be worse than the Holocaust, but to make matters less good, they had communism there. So it was just not good for them to be known as Jews. So they hid their Judaism, and they married, some married out of the faith, some married in the faith, but they both hid their Judaism, and they kept it hidden all these years. So 70 years later, now all of a sudden, these people are getting old, and communism's gone. They feel free to speak about their reality, and they don't want the secret to die with them. So they're telling their children and grandchildren the truth. And you can imagine that for these people, these young people who are growing up in a fairly anti-Semitic society, and some of them, their own families are anti-Semitic. And here they are growing up in this, and they are discovering that they themselves are those people that they've hated all this time. And it's a shock. They don't know what to do with this information. So they this kind of a lost feeling, and we have programs for them, many programs. We have emissaries there who work with them. We do seminars. They come to Israel for seminars. We have seminars in Poland. We have webinars. We have emails that we send out, all sorts of things that we do for them, and it's all to help them adjust to this knowledge and do whatever they want with it. Again, we don't have an agenda. We're not saying, oh, you have Jewish roots, therefore you should be Jewish. We're saying, well, you have Jewish roots, so here's the information that you may need to understand your own heritage, and we're here for you, whatever it is that you want. And so you have all these. This is a seminar that we did for them here in Israel, and every one of them has an incredible story. This young woman, she tells of how her grandmother every Hanukkah would serve these special donuts, which of course any Jew knows that that's a special Hanukkah food. But for Christmas, they would, they had these, let's say Hanukkah, Christmas. For Christmas, they had these special donuts, and that was their traditional food. And only afterwards did she realize, and they had little tops that they would spin for Christmas, which isn't a Christmas thing. But she didn't know. She didn't know any better. She just knew this is what we do in our family. And when she discovered the truth, she understood. They also, every year for Easter, would change the dishes, which anybody who's familiar with the Jewish traditions knows that that's what we do for Passover, for Pesach, which is at the same time. So there were all these little hints that, she had no idea. And this young man, you see that Star of David that he's wearing. One day his grandmother was ill, called he and his family, to her bed, and sent them to the attic, to this corner of the attic where there was a package, and she told them exactly where to find it. And inside the package was a menorah, Chanukiah, the candelabra for Hanukkah, and this Star of David that she'd held on to for 70 years. It's amazing, and she held the secret, and it's incredible to see this happening over and over again. I recently wrote an article about the lost Jews of Poland, and the editor asked me. She said, "Well, how many Jews are there? We want to put the data in there." And I actually asked the chief rabbi of Poland, and I said, "How many of these Jews are there?" And he said, "Nobody knows, because this is a story that's unfolding every day, and every day there are more. So there's thousands, but 10,000 more, we don't know." And again, it's generations, so it's expanded. So it's really just incredible to see it. And the last picture I'll show you, it somehow just brings everything all together. This is a group of Bnei Menashe high school students on a trip to Poland to visit Auschwitz. They do these heritage trips from Israel. There's high school students in Israel, and they went to Poland to visit, the past, the Jewish past. And some people had said to them, or had said about them, well, it's not their past. They were in India, and that wasn't, and nothing can be further from the truth, because we're one people. I wasn't in Poland either. My grandparents came out long before the Holocaust, but we are one people, and it is the heritage of our people. And it's one of the things I think that have kept us as a people for all of these years, that despite the fact that we were exiled and all over to all four corners of the world, yet our heritage and our history and our people and our story is one. And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter where we are and where we will be, but our focus is always here, and the past is all of ours to share. So that is the amazing story of the Bnei Menashe and Shavei Israel. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you. You promised some songs.
Oh, I did. I did promise. You were right. I did. And I'll show you now. Okay. Thank you for remembering.
I have some questions, but I'll ask later.
Sure. You could ask while I'm finding the songs.
I was just wondering about the Bnei Menashe, like during their time in India, because when they come here, it's like they have Jewish wedding, but back in India, what kind of wedding do they have?
They do a Jewish wedding. No, they do a Jewish wedding, but until they are official Jews, it's not an official Jewish ceremonial wedding, and it's, you know, the ceremony is very, very important to us. Like it's considered a holy ceremony, but that holiness is not complete until both parties are Jewish. Okay, so here's okay. Videos. Here we go.
It's just amazing to see the commitment of the Bnei Menashe, because, like, the other Jews from around the world, especially from the developed countries or the West, before visiting any place, they would Google. Like, they would Google the place, they would check out the places, you know.
Well, they do. They have computers and they have.
No, but it's less because like connectivity is less,
Right.
and like especially the older generation, they do not have access. Like they're computer illiterate, like most of them, so they do not have any idea how developed Israelis, or you know, for economic reasons, they have no idea about such things. But they're willing to come to this country and so on.
But realize also that, especially now with like more and more people that are here, most people there have friends or family who've already made Aliyah. So they like have WhatsApp. They do connect. They have some connection, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
So okay, so this song that I'm going to play for you, this was at a wedding recently. One of these weddings. It was 15 couples, and anyone who's ever been to a Jewish wedding, you know that they sing a song for Jerusalem before they break the glass. Okay, so there's certain traditional songs, a few different ones, different versions of the same, but they have their own song. Let's see if it'll work. Come on. Really? It's not going to work? Okay, so we're going to plug it and just do it the normal way, because I know it works. Oh, come on. Videos. I'll just show it to you from my phone. It's worth it. All right. Worth it. It is worth it. It's very cool. I have to remember to open it to the video before I start. So it's ready to go. Here. Here, you can pass it around. Pass it around.